Did you know that the food from Chick-fil-A is pre-blessed? Well, at least that's how the joke goes. A joke that gets to the heart of another piece of baggage that we have when we talk about the word Christian. I think that our ideas surrounding this company and their choice to align with Christian values really gets to the heart of what it means when we say the word Christian. We use Christian as a pseudo title for anything that's vaguely religious, anything that might kind of have the values of what it means to be a Christ follower. And as we use Christian that way, it loses meaning. It becomes a safe word. We feel safety when we jump from one Christian company to another, or one Christian person to another. When we flip the In-N-Out cup upside down, we feel reassured that we can trust their products, that we can trust how they're running their business. But that strays away from the original meaning of the word Christian. In fact, the early church would have never even used that word to describe themselves. Paul is a man who was associated with the word Christian since we were first called Christians. Back in Antioch, where the Christians there were first called Christians, and they were called that because they crossed the boundary between Jews and Gentile, Paul was there teaching with Barnabas. When they crossed that boundary, Paul would then go on to cross many more boundaries for Christ. And as his life continues, that's what ends him up on trial. For 2 years, he spends time in Jerusalem on trial for what he does for Christ. There are two main things that he is accused of. The first is the resurrection of the dead. You see, the Jews didn't really like that very much. The Jews thought that Jesus died and that was it. And because Paul believed very strongly that Jesus wasn't dead, the Jews were pretty upset with him. The second thing that puts him in jail is that he was hanging out with too many Gentiles. Paul had crossed too many boundaries for the Jews to be comfortable with it, and they brought him to trial in front of Roman people. And he ends up in his last trial in front of Herod Agrippa, which is not a good thing, because Herod Agrippa is from a family that is one of the most feared in all of Roman history. Every time a righteous person sits in front of a Herod, they die. So as the story continues, every sentence has the weight of Paul's life on it. Every word has the potential for being his last. And what does Paul do? Paul tells his story. And as he does, he tells his story with an emphasis on who he was before Christ. Paul was a murderer. Paul was a person who went out and killed Christ followers. And on the road to Damascus, all of that changed. Paul goes from the great persecutor to the great advocate. And it's an incredible transformation that he really leans into as he tells his story. Ultimately ending with how powerful Jesus dying on the cross, defeating death, and rising again to bring life to humanity. As he tells that story, King Agrippa feels something that he didn't expect. His response is documented in Acts 26:28, where it says, "Are you so quickly persuading me to become a Christian?" So King Agrippa uses the word Christian to refer to Paul, but also to refer to himself. All at once, King Agrippa insults Paul, but also says, that is an incredible story of transformation. And Paul's response tells you where he is. Paul says, "Whether quickly or not, I pray to God that not only you, but also all who are listening to me today might become such as I am." Paul has gone from the persecutor to the advocate. An incredible transformation that tells you that Paul did not live his life safe. So as we think about Christian as a safe word, Christian was a terrible insult and dangerous word during Paul's trial. But Paul flips it and shows just how great an advocate is. Christian is not a word for those who are safe. Christian is a word for those who have chosen to overcome great boundaries, those who don't fit into the world around them, those who have gone from the great persecutor to the great advocate.